Last year, 24 days after the Forbes 400 ranking of the wealthiest Americans was finalized, Elon Musk surpassed Amazon founder Jeff Bezos as the richest person in the world. Now, 1 year later, Musk can finally claim his gold. He's number one on the Forbes 400 for the first time this year with an estimated net worth of $251 billion. $60.5 billion more than he had on last year's ranking and $100 billion more than Jeff Bezos. The triumph brings to a screeching halt Bezos' 4-year reign as the wealthiest American. He was hurt by a decline in Amazon shares, which fell 27% and erased $50 billion of his fortune between the two lists, which were finalized in early September of their respective years. Only Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook's parent company Meta Platforms, who shed $76.8 billion, fared worse. And Musk has even more to taunt his space rival with. It took him half as long as Bezos to reach the top of the Forbes 400, despite having nearly twice as far to climb. In 1998, the year after taking Amazon public, Bezos debuted at number 102 with a $1.6 billion fortune. It took him another 2 decades to unseat Microsoft's Bill Gates for the top spot in 2018. Musk made his first Forbes 400 appearance in 2012 at number 190, 2 years after Tesla's IPO with a net worth of $2.4 billion. Musk can mostly thank Tesla for his ascent. He owns about 25% of the electric car maker between stocks and options, a stake that, even after accounting for shares pledged as collateral, was worth $176.3 billion as of September 2nd. When Forbes locked in net worths for the 2022 Forbes 400, Tesla shares were 11% higher than they were for the 2021 list, due in large part to the record revenue and profit the company reported for the first quarter of 2022. The rest is mostly from rocket maker SpaceX, which quadrupled its valuation over the last 3 years to $127 billion. $53 billion of it in the past year, thanks to a fresh round of funding in July that was propelled by high demand for trips on its rockets, which it says are already being booked for 2025. On April 25th, Musk signed a deal to buy Twitter for $54.20 per share and unloaded $8.5 billion of Tesla stock over the next 3 days. In early August, after equity markets began falling and Musk attempted to squash the deal, he dumped another $6.9 billion of Tesla shares over 4 days. The two sides are headed to court in October. Tesla shares closed at $270.21 on September 2nd, down 20% since he dropped the Twitter news. In the past year, he also became the first person to ever cross the $300 billion mark after the car rental giant Hertz announced it was buying 100,000 Teslas for a reported $4.2 billion.
Where do the world's richest people prefer to call home? Despite some shifts within the rankings, the most popular locations are largely the same as 2021. These are the top 10 cities with the most billionaires. In 10th place is Seoul. The South Korean capital is back on the list for the first time since 2019. 3 of Seoul's 4 billionaire newcomers are self-made. Dropping from the number 8 spot, San Francisco is home to 4 fewer billionaires than last year. The city actually welcomed a stable of new, ultra-rich entrepreneurs, but the plunging fortunes of others left the city with a net loss. In 8th place is Mumbai. The Indian metropolis held on to the number 8 spot with a net gain of 3 billionaires compared to last year, including Falguni Nayar, who became India's richest self-made woman, with an estimated net worth of $4.5 billion, after taking her beauty and fashion retailer Nykaa public in November. The city's richest resident, Reliance Industries chairman Mukesh Ambani, single-handedly makes up for more than 30% of the collective net worth of Mumbai's billionaires. Taking the number 7 spot is Moscow. Moscow lost more billionaires than any other city on the list amid the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine. All but 2 living in Russia's capital came away worse off than they were a year prior. Vladimir Lizin, the chairman of steel products manufacturer NLMK Group and Moscow's richest person, shed about $8 billion of his personal wealth. 26 others fell off the billionaires list altogether. A hub for self-made billionaires, China's Silicon Valley fell to number 6 after losing 9 billionaire residents over the past year. 3 were investors in the vaping company S'more International, whose shares plummeted 64% as the Chinese government threatened to crack down on electronic cigarettes. Shenzhen's richest person, Ma Huateng, also took a hit. The internet media tycoon's fortune dropped by more than $28 billion since 2021. Shanghai lost fewer billionaires than other Chinese cities, but still saw its stable of super-rich residents drop from 64 to 61. Bucking the trend, Shanghai's richest person, Liu Yongjing, the chairman of agriculture and chemicals firm East Hope Group, more than doubled his fortune to an estimated $13.2 billion. London rose to number 4 as it relaxed long-standing pandemic restrictions. Though it had a net gain of 3 new billionaires, the city actually welcomed 6 new 3 Comma Club members, including the first Bulgarian and Estonian citizens ever named billionaires by Forbes, all of whom have their primary residences in London. Another city with a dramatic drop in billionaires, Hong Kong lost a dozen amid a year of market tumult and strict COVID-19 protocols. The stalling tourism industry knocked casinos and hotel billionaires from the city's super-rich ranks. Increased government scrutiny unleashed a world of pain for the super-rich in China's capital, who have shed $174.3 billion from their collective net worth since 2021. A total of 17 billionaires fell below the 3 comma threshold. A rare winner among the turmoil was Zhang Yiming, the founder of TikTok owner ByteDance and Beijing's richest resident, who is $14.4 billion richer than last year. A fresh infusion of wealth and trouble in Asia's markets over the past year helped end the short-lived reign of Beijing, which usurped New York as the top billionaire city for the first time in 6 years in 2021. New York gained 8 new billionaire residents over the past year, more than any other city on the list. Most are in the finance industry, including Thrive Capital founder Josh Kushner, while other NYC newcomers include the first NFT billionaires identified by Forbes, Devin Fisner and Alex Atala, the co-founders of the buzzy blockchain startup OpenSea. Despite the heightened competition, media magnate Michael Bloomberg remains the richest resident, accounting for some 13% of the city's total billionaire wealth.
When, in math and science and physics and, these fields, there's always a right answer. You're right or you're wrong. And I actually think that teaches you some of the wrong lessons. I remember really vividly some of my early violin lessons where you could get all the notes right, but that actually isn't what mattered. What mattered is that you could weave through the notes the emotion and the story that the original composer was trying to convey. And I think it was a really powerful lesson, because I think, one thing that many of us learn over time is that a lot of times it's not about something being clinically correct or clinically right or exactly right. It's about how they kind of make people feel. And I think that definitely is true in technology, and it's definitely true in everything that we try to build. My name's Alexandr Wang. I'm the CEO and founder of Scale AI. Scale AI is the data infrastructure for AI to power the most ambitious AI projects in the world. Every organization wants to implement AI, but oftentimes the biggest bottleneck in their way is being able to create really high quality data and data sets to power that AI. At Scale, we sort of view data as the core problem of building great AI, whereas a lot of other companies view it as an afterthought, and that really prevents AI from having sort of the magnitude of outcomes that it's able to have. We've raised over $600 million to date, and we work with everywhere from the largest automakers in the world, like Toyota and General Motors, to the United States Department of Defense, to some of the largest enterprises in the world, like Microsoft, Square, and PayPal, and some of the leading AI research organizations, like OpenAI. When you learn how to program for the first time, it's kind of shocking, but you actually are generally sort of telling the computer to do very simple things. The art of programming traditionally is the art of sort of giving computers very black and white instructions, very simple instructions that anybody could follow. And one of the beauties of AI is that you actually have the ability to program computers with judgment and with reasoning and with sort of nuanced understanding of the world. And so you can have an AI system look at an image and tell you what's in the image, or listen to an audio snippet and understand what's being said. And it is sort of this incredible enabler for what computers can do, or the power of computing. And in general, I think we've already seen sort of over the past many decades what the power of computers and computing and mobile phones and all that stuff has been on humanity. And I think AI and machine learning has a huge opportunity to do the same. Both my parents are physicists, and I grew up in this small town in New Mexico called Los Alamos, New Mexico, where there's a national lab, and a lot of the people I grew up with had parents who were scientists of some sort. It was a sort of very special place. And my mom, from a very young age, taught me about math and physics and science, and she taught me with such wonders. I was really impatient as a kid. I think I always wanted to be learning more, or I always wanted to be doing more, always wanted to sort of be accomplishing more. And so I actually, I left high school after my junior year of high school and then moved out to Silicon Valley to work as a software engineer. I learned so much about building products, about what it meant to sort of like be metrics focused and data focused, and what it sort of meant to build great software. And then that's when I was inspired by AI. I sort of saw it in my daily work and I was like, AI is really cool. And I went back to MIT, and then after about a year of MIT, I dropped out to start Scale. We have over 500 people now, so it's pretty insane to watch, what originally started as a, few people in the basement of our investor to what it's sort of become. Where we started was in autonomous vehicles and self-driving, and I think it was one of the first real use cases and applications of AI that I think caught the imagination of the world. What if we could have unlimited, easy, eco-friendly transportation everywhere in the world through autonomous vehicles? One of the examples that we get really excited about is in healthcare. In healthcare, there's a huge bottleneck in the number of doctors, trained doctors all around the world, and there's incredible potential for AI and machine learning to actually analyze as many of the cases as possible automatically before needing escalation to a doctor, so the doctor can spend their time on cases with anomalies or erratic data or whatnot. And so at Scale, we actually did research with MIT on using AI and machine learning to analyze dermatology data and dermatology imaging to see how AI could actually automate that process and then therefore unblock the sort of doctor bottleneck. Another use case that I'm really passionate about is using AI to help solve some of the largest geopolitical problems and working with governments in being able to sort of provide technology to aid in some of these very tough and tricky situations. In the war with Russia and Ukraine, we actually deployed Scale's technology in understanding satellite imagery of major Ukrainian cities, Kharkiv, Kiev, and Dnipro, to understand what was the amount of damage in key parts of these cities. And so we analyzed using machine learning as well as satellite imagery and identified all sorts of structures in these cities where there was meaningful damage that wasn't otherwise being addressed or captured by humanitarian efforts. And so I'm incredibly excited by our work there and actually enabling sort of humanitarian efforts, enabling us to respond to some of the world's most pressing and exigent problems. In the world of AI, there's, I think, a lot of very smart people, but who are focused, so far out in the future that it's almost unhelpful. There's so many people focused on what's going to happen when we have AGI or what's going to happen, 2 or 3 decades in the future. And I think there's not enough people who are really focused on what are the problems that we have today and how can we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to really change the game today. And so I think what's next for us is to be the people, some of the people, hopefully in the world, who are focused on how do we solve some of the biggest problems today around climate, around agriculture, around geopolitics, around medicine, and really start making an impact, now.
So tell us about Cost Plus Drugs, how you got involved in the company and in the national discussion and debate on drug pricing.
So there's 2 elements there. One is with healthcare. And so probably 2017, when there was a lot of discussion when the Republicans got into the White House about getting rid of the ACA, there was a big question mark about what would replace it. And so I was talking with various people in the administration, and they were like, well, if you have any ideas, let us know. And so I started looking at, what could be created to replace the ACA. So I started funding these studies with various economists to just look at what are the underlying costs of healthcare. And around the same time, I got a cold email from Dr. Alexandr Wang. And he was telling me about the pharmacy, the compounding pharmacy he was creating in Denver that was looking for funding to be able to create drugs to handle shortages of drugs. So very often drugs, even generic drugs, go in short supply, and when that happens, either somebody jacks up the price or it just is not available or very difficult to get. And so as we were going back and forth via email, I started asking questions, well, why stop here? And that was when Martin Shkreli was doing his thing and he was going to jail. And I was like, well, if this idiot can jack up prices 1,500% or whatever it was for Daraprim, that means there's fungibility in the pricing. There must be an opportunity to reduce the cost as well. Can we look at that? And so that's where we started the process of working together to say, okay, what are all the regulatory issues? What are all the pharmacy issues? All the things that, all the I's you have to, the dot and T's you have to cross just to be in this business. And that took about 3 years. And we finally got to the point where it was, okay, let's start working with a drug called albendazole, where we had somebody manufacture it for us. And what albendazole is a drug for hookworm, for parasitics. And it's still a problem in rural areas of Alabama and Texas, South Carolina, and other places across the country. And it costs $200 per course. And I was like, well, if we manufacture it or have somebody manufacture it for us, what could we sell it for? And he was like, $12. I was like, okay, that's an indication that maybe there's something that we can change here. And so we went through the process, working with Baylor School of Medicine, and I think it was their health sciences group, and had somebody manufacture it for us, went through the whole FDA approval process, worked with a bunch of clinics where we provided to them a cost, and then started selling it as a cost plus drugs branded drug. And we learned some things there and said, okay, now it's time to expand. Can we go and work with a bunch of generic manufacturers to offer as many drugs as we possibly can? And that was the genesis of where we are today with cost plus drugs. We partnered with a company called TruePill, who's been great to work with, where they helped provide software and build the website and all that, and became our dispensing pharmacy. And that shortcutted a lot of the dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And in January of 2022, this year, we launched our website and started shipping about 110 drugs. And from there, we've grown to probably 900, by the time people see this, 950 of the top 1,000 generic drugs that are available that we're offering on cost plus drugs.
Mm-hmm. And you have about 1 million people on board already.
Yeah, so we're adding anywhere on a weekend, well, now it's changing by the day, but let's just say 5,000 to 10,000 people per day. And that number is going up like this. All our numbers are going up like this, like a hockey stick. It's incredible.
I don't think a lot of people know that this is something that you've been working on quietly for years now.
Yeah.
It just kind of popped up.
No, it didn't just, okay, let's just launch our website, because you've got to get, before a drug manufacturer, whether it's generics or brand, is going to work with you, they have to trust you. And they have to believe you're not going to screw up their business, and you're going to create more demand, and you're going to take care of patients and do it the right way. And that's one of the reasons I put my name on it. There's never been a for-profit company, or private benefit company for that matter, that I've put my name on before. I've done it on foundational stuff, but never on a regular company. And I put it on there to show people that I was serious, that I was financially committed, and that we were going to make this work. And that helped us get contracts with multiple generic manufacturers, which helped us push down the pricing further, which allowed us upon launch to be able to offer the 110 drugs. And I'd say part two to what we came up with in launching cost plus drugs was transparency. Because the missing element in all of healthcare right now is trust. And the only way you're going to get people to trust you is to be completely transparent. And so what we decided to do, which was unheard of and people thought we were crazy, was to show our price and to only mark things up 15%, show you what our TruePill pharmacy handling fee, and show you our shipping costs. So when you go to Cost Plus Drugs and costplusdrugs.com, and you put in the name of the drug that you're looking to buy, you'll see exactly what we pay for it. You'll see that it's marked up 15%. We'll show you what the markup is. You'll see that there's a $3 handling fee for the pharmacy and $5 shipping. And that's it. And so which is great for patients, but a secondary effect has been that everybody in the industry can now see what we pay for a drug. And we may pay a little bit more than some other folks just because we may not be as big yet as they are, but everybody and anybody can see our costs. And so now you're starting to see studies come out comparing, what it would be, how much money Medicare would save if they bought from cost plus drugs, working backwards for different studies to see what this generic or that generic actually costs. And so not only have we had an impact on patients' lives, but we've had an impact on the industry.
I actually spoke to the researcher behind the Harvard study.
Yes. And that was only 77 of the drugs that we sell. Imagine if they used all 900 plus.
Mm-hmm. And so what's your vision for the company and its impact that it could have on the pharmaceutical industry?
I mean, our mission is to be the low-cost provider of every medication that we're legally allowed to sell. Period, end of story. You're not going to see us add a ton of bells and whistles. You're not going to see telemedicine. You're not going to see adherence regimens. It's wrong that in this country, or anywhere for that matter, that people have to choose between their medications and rent and food and other important elements. And so if we can reduce that stress and solve that problem just a little bit, that's an amazing accomplishment. And so our mission is very singular, very direct, and very simple: to be the low-cost provider of medications for every drug we're allowed to sell, period, end of story.
The Gates' lifetime irrevocable giving has hit $55 billion, making them the biggest philanthropists of all time. This comes following Bill Gates' $20 billion donation to the eponymous foundation he co-runs, for now, with his ex-wife, Melinda French Gates. They move ahead of friend Warren Buffett, who has given away nearly $49 billion, most of it to the Gates Foundation. The real-world impact of this gift is massive. It means the Gates Foundation, the world's largest, will now jack up its spending by 50% to $9 billion a year by 2026. In an interview with Forbes this week, Bill Gates says he fully intends to give his way off the Forbes Billionaires list while he's still alive. Thanks to this most recent gift, he drops one spot to number 5 in the world with a net worth of some $102 billion sitting outside the foundation. Gates also said he intends to make another large donation to the foundation down the line once he's seen how the foundation handles a significant ramp up in spending.
27 years, 15 majors, and 5 back surgeries after turning pro. The world's most popular golfer is now the newest member of the 3 Comma Club.
When Tiger's in town, there's always a crowd.
Triumph, injury, scandal, failure, and triumph again have filled the years since Tiger Woods first stalked the fairways at the 1997 Masters. But through it all, the 46-year-old Woods has maintained his supremacy as one of the top-earning athletes in the world, raking in over $1.7 billion in salary, endorsements, and other income over the course of his 27-year career, more than anyone else we've tracked. Forbes now estimates his net worth to be at least $1 billion, making him one of just 2 active athletes to achieve billionaire status, along with NBA superstar LeBron James. Michael Jordan, the only other athlete billionaire, didn't hit 10 digits until after he retired, thanks to a well-timed investment in the NBA's Charlotte Hornets. Less than 10% of Woods' career earnings and net worth come from golf winnings. He amassed his fortune primarily through enormous endorsement deals with brands like Nike, Gatorade, and Rolex. He's also assembled an impressive real estate portfolio, including Jupiter, Florida, and owns chunks of businesses such as a restaurant called The Woods and an operator of upscale mini golf courses with plans to expand nationwide.
The centre of attention even on the practice range. Tiger Woods preparing for his second round with all the meticulous attention to detail, which has turned him into what many believe is the best player the world has ever seen.
Woods' impact on golf's TV ratings and purse sizes cannot be overstated.
10,000 fans came to watch this year's 3-time major winner tame the green at Hyde Park.
In the early 2000s, according to former CBS president Neil Pilson, TV audiences would drop 30 to 50% when Woods was not in contention at a tournament. This so-called Tiger effect contributed to PGA Tour winnings nearly tripling between 1996 and 2008, a stretch in which Woods won 14 major championships. And that's helped the off-field bucks get much bigger too. There's a long tradition, spanning Babe Ruth to Arnold Palmer to Jordan, of athletes getting paid to endorse brands. But now the endorsement potential stretches into the 3 commas, thanks to the amplifying effect of modern media and technology. Woods, for example, has over 10 million followers across Twitter, Instagram, and other social media platforms. At his peak, Woods was the most prolific athlete endorser in history, earning north of $100 million per year off the course. He held the #1 spot in Forbes' highest paid athletes list for 10 consecutive years, ending in 2012. Even now, despite hardly ever teeing the ball up over the past 12 months while recovering from a serious car accident, Woods collected $68 million in off-course income, enough to make him the 14th highest paid athlete in the world. Woods has used his status and earnings to expand his business, which now includes a golf design business, a live events production company, and a restaurant. Woods is also identified as a partner in a SPAC announced in January. When combined with his real estate holdings, Woods' wealth is secured, whether or not he ever swings a golf club again.
Most people know Josh Kushner as the younger brother of former President Trump's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner, or even as the son of New York City real estate mogul Charles Kushner, who spent some time in prison nearly 2 decades ago for witness tampering, tax evasion, and campaign finance violations. He's also married to supermodel Karlie Kloss. But Josh became the first Kushner ever to make Forbes' Billionaire list this year, thanks to his success as a venture capitalist, which has largely flown under the radar outside of the industry. Josh founded his venture capital firm Thrive Capital in 2010, shortly after he graduated from Harvard Business School, where he did some angel investing and caught the attention of venture capital firm General Catalyst's co-founder Joel Cutler, who convinced Josh to start his own fund and vouched for him when he did. Cutler and General Catalyst ended up seeding Thrive's first $5 million funding round in 2010 and introduced Josh to other investors helping to get the young Thrive off the ground. So over the years, Thrive has invested in some of the most high-profile startups of the last decade, including Robinhood, Slack, Spotify, and even Kim Kardashian's shapewear brand Skims. But his best investments may have been in Instagram and digital payments firm Stripe. Way back in 2012, when Thrive was still a very young firm, Josh muscled into Instagram's competitive Series B funding round alongside venture capital heavyweights like Sequoia Capital, investing in the company at a $500 million valuation just days before Facebook acquired the social media company, earning Josh's fund a quick 100% return. Then in 2014, Thrive actually led a $70 million funding round that valued Stripe at just over $3 billion, which is a lot less than the $150 billion plus that Stripe was valued at in the secondary market transaction last year. Goldman Sachs unit Petershill Partners invested an estimated $120 million in Thrive last May in return for what we estimate to be a 3% stake. That would value the firm at $3.6 billion, and we figured Josh owns about 2/3 of Thrive, leaving him with a $1.9 billion stake after we applied a conservative 20% private company discount. As there always are, there have been some bumps along the way for Josh. He actually founded a health insurance company based around Obamacare shortly before his brother and former President Donald Trump entered the White House. And after pivoting away from its Obamacare-based business model, the company actually went public at a valuation north of $7 billion in early 2021. But by the time Forbes finalized our list of the world's billionaires this March, the company's market capitalization had cratered to under $2 billion, leaving Thrive, which now holds Josh's stake, with 20% ownership of the company. Forbes has heard from founders like Spotify's Daniel Ek and Instagram's Kevin Systrom that Josh is a hands-on investor that really understands the startup journey, and they really appreciate that. That's allowed him to get into some highly competitive deals. And so Thrive continues to grow. Just this February, it raised its 8th and largest funding round to date at $3 billion after raising $2 billion in a funding round a year earlier. And its total assets now stand at around $16 billion. While Josh has never played an active role at Kushner Companies, his family's real estate business, just last September, he, his wife Karlie Kloss, and their newborn son moved into a $43 million penthouse in New York City's Puck Building, which is owned by Kushner Companies and also home to Thrive Capital's headquarters. So I think it's fair to say that for Josh, his family and his business are never far away from one another.
There are 87 fewer billionaires in the world in 2022, according to Forbes. While countries like Russia and China are shedding billionaires, 4 countries got their first ever billionaires over the past year: Barbados, Bulgaria, Estonia, and Uruguay. There is now at least 1 billionaire in 75 countries. Here are the nations that got their first member of the 3 Club this year. Barbados. Rihanna may be most famous for her musical career, but it's her 50% stake in cosmetics brand Fenty Beauty, which she co-owns with luxury conglomerate LVMH, that earned her a spot among the billionaires. She owns an estimated 30% of the Savage X Fenty lingerie line, which raised $125 million in January, and is now reportedly weighing an IPO at a $3 billion valuation. Bulgaria. Georgy and Kirill Domoshev got their start selling locally manufactured clothes and shoes after the fall of communism in Sofia, Bulgaria in the 1990s. Later, they joined forces with a group of undisclosed investors to acquire newly privatized companies that had been state-owned. The brothers started investing alone in 2000, when they bought 54% of partially state-owned animal health firm BioVet. They eventually purchased the company outright and transformed it into Huvepharma, now the world's 6th largest livestock health firm, with operations stretching from Lincoln, Nebraska to northwestern Italy. Their other holdings range from bulk cargo shipping to Ludogorets Razgrad, which became the country's most successful soccer team under their ownership. Estonia. Christo Carmen and his fellow Estonian co-founder set up Wise, then known as TransferWise, in London in 2011. When the two decided they were, quote, sick of losing their money to their banks each time they sent money to their native Estonia. Now the firm processes nearly $8 billion in cross-border payments each month for its 12 million customers across 52 countries. When Wise went public in London in July 2021, Carmen's 19% stake was worth $2 billion. The stock fell by 39% from then through March 11th, the day Forbes finalized valuations for the 2022 World's Billionaires list. Uruguay. Andrei Soroki and Sergio Fogel teamed up in 2009 to launch AstroPay, a payments firm that helps consumers in emerging markets store funds online using a prepaid virtual debit card. In 2016, they helped co-found dLocal, which helps large multinational firms, including Amazon, Netflix, Uber, and Microsoft, to handle cross-border payments from customers in 35 emerging markets. dLocal became Uruguay's first unicorn in September 2020, when the firm raised $200 million at a $1.2 billion valuation, and went public on the Nasdaq in June 2021.
The rich don't always get richer. As a group, the 400 wealthiest Americans are worth $4 trillion, $500 billion less than last year. The minimum net worth to make the Forbes 400 this year dropped for the first time since the Great Recession, down $200 million to $2.7 billion amid the market sell-off. At number 5 is Warren Buffett, worth $97 billion. In March, Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway agreed to shell out $11.6 billion for insurer Allegheny Corp. In April, he told investors he had put $51 billion of Berkshire's cash into stocks, including billion-dollar bets on Chevron, Occidental Petroleum, and HP. One of the biggest philanthropists in history, Buffett continued his summer tradition of donating billions to charity, giving shares worth about $4 billion to the Gates Foundation, as well as to foundations for his 3 children and late wife in June. At number 4 is Larry Ellison, worth $101 billion. Ellison, who contributed $1 billion to Elon Musk's Twitter bid, has reportedly been subpoenaed by Twitter in a messy legal battle over the deal. The Oracle founder also made news in May when it was revealed that he joined a November 2020 conference call to discuss ways to overturn Donald Trump's election loss. At number 3 is Bill Gates, worth $106 billion. In July, Gates announced he was shifting $20 billion of his fortune to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That big gift accounts for most of the estimated $28 billion drop in his net worth over the past year. Gates, who saw an outbreak like COVID-19 coming back in 2015, released a new book in May, How to Prevent the Next Pandemic. At number 2 is Jeff Bezos, worth $151 billion. Knocked from the top spot for the first time since 2017, the Amazon founder and chairman saw his net worth drop $50 billion as the e-commerce giant's shares tumbled more than 20%. Through his VC firm, he's invested in everything from digital media company Overtime Sports to Wildtype, which makes seafood from fish cells. Meanwhile, Bezos ordered a super yacht so big that shipmaker Ocean Co. had to request that a historic bridge in Rotterdam be dismantled in order for the vessel to leave. The yacht, which is on the verge of completion, was eventually towed away after intense backlash with the bridge still intact. And at number 1 is Elon Musk, worth $251 billion. Musk tops the Forbes 400 for the first time thanks to a fresh round of funding for his private rocket business, SpaceX, valuing it at $127 billion, and an 11% climb in the value of Tesla stock. That's despite a 20% drop in the electric car maker's shares since Musk announced his $44 billion takeover of Twitter in April, which he's been fighting to void. Last November, he became the first person worth $300 billion. Collectively, the world's 10 highest paid athletes raked in $992 million over the last 12 months before taxes and agents' fees, according to Forbes' estimates. This year's total is the third highest ever, behind 2 years in which Conor McGregor skewed the results, in 2021 with the sale of his Irish whiskey brand, Proper No. 12, and in 2018 after his boxing super fight against Floyd Mayweather. In one clear sign that sports top stars are doing better than ever, the cutoff to make the top 10 this year is $80.9 million, posted by Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks. That's an 8% jump from 2021's record high of $75 million. With Neymar turning 30 in February, Antetokounmpo is the only member of this year's top 10 still in his 20s. The two-time NBA MVP signed a 5-year, $228 million contract in December of 2020, the league's largest contract by total value to date. At number 9 is Tom Brady, who made $83.9 million. While Brady plans to hit the field for his 23rd season in the NFL, he's got a number of off-field ventures that have helped push up his fortune. Autograph, the NFT platform he co-founded last year, raised $170 million in a Series B funding round announced in January. Meanwhile, one of his production companies, 199 Productions, is behind the upcoming road trip movie 80 for Brady, and he has a new clothing line cleverly named Brady. And when it's finally time to retire permanently from football, Brady already has the next gig lined up, a commentator role with Fox Sports. According to the New York Post, that deal is set to pay him more than he's earned on the field across 22 seasons in the NFL, $375 million over 10 years. At number 8 is Canelo Alvarez, who made $90 million. Alvarez is boxing's top draw, earning $40 million or more from his 2 pay-per-view victories last May and November. Beyond the ring, Alvarez has a lucrative partnership with Hennessy and said last year that he would be launching a chain of gas stations in his native Mexico. At number 7 is Roger Federer, who made $90.7 million. Injuries limited Federer to 6 tournaments in 2020 and 2021 combined, and he is yet to return to the tennis court in 2022. No matter, the world's former number 1 player remains the top pitchman in sports, promoting brands such as Uniqlo and Rolex. He also invested in the burgeoning Swiss shoe brand On in 2019, and the company went public in September, raising more than $600 million. At number 6 is Kevin Durant, who made $92.1 million. The Brooklyn Nets star brings in roughly $28 million annually from Nike, a sneaker deal surpassed only by LeBron James's among active players. Durant has recently added deals with Coinbase, NBA Top Shot, and Weedmaps, but with media company Boardroom and investment firm 35 Ventures, his business empire goes far beyond endorsements. At number 5 is Steph Curry, who made $92.8 million. No NBA player made more in salary this season than Curry, and the Golden State Warriors guard is due for a raise after signing a 4-year, $215 million extension last August. Curry's new FTX endorsement deal came with an equity stake, and he dived deeper into blockchain in December, releasing a collection of NFTs that featured his sneakers and were tied to 3 metaverse platforms. At number 4 is Neymar, who made $95 million. Neymar scored his 400th career goal in November, but he was stung by criticism after Paris Saint-Germain's early Champions League exit. Off the pitch, he has a valuable set of endorsements including Puma and Red Bull, and he's diving into the world of NFTs, signing with the platform NFT Star in November. At number 3 is Cristiano Ronaldo, who made $115 million. Much of Ronaldo's earning power comes from his massive social media presence. He He has 690 million followers across Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, giving him leverage to demand sky-high rates from sponsors such as Nike, Herbalife, and Clear Shampoo. He's also the face of Zuju GP, a forthcoming app aiming to be a digital soccer community. At number 2 is LeBron James, who made $121.2 million. James's Los Angeles Lakers missed the playoffs this season, but he's never been so dominant off the court. In October, he sold a significant minority stake in his production company Spring Hill at a valuation of about $725 million, pushing his net worth to $850 million according to Forbes' estimates. James also became only the 10th athlete in the history of the Forbes list to surpass $100 million in earning in a single year. And at number 1 is Lionel Messi, who made $130 million. Messi claims the top spot in Forbes' annual ranking for the second time. Messi's new $20 million a year partnership with fan engagement app Socios adds to an endorsement portfolio that includes Adidas, Budweiser, and PepsiCo. He also became Hard Rock International's first athlete brand ambassador in a deal announced last June, helping Messi draw level with Ronaldo with his off-field earnings for the first time since 2013. Both made an estimated $55 million off the field over the last 12 months.
A Decacorn is a private venture-backed company that's valued at more than $10 billion. And it used to be that if you had a startup and you went and raised money from investors and they valued your company at $1 billion, your company was called a unicorn. And that used to be, kind of the gold standard, in Silicon Valley to create a unicorn. And nowadays, $1 billion is kind of not enough. And the really impressive metric is creating a company that's valued at $10 billion and being a Decacorn. When we were putting together the Billionaires list this year, we found that more than 30 companies became Decacorns over the past year. So Decacorns are overwhelmingly tech companies. They're companies that do everything from grammar checking software to fintech companies to cryptocurrency exchanges. If you want to have the really big valuations these days, usually your company has a really heavy tech component to it. There are Decacorns everywhere, and some of them are some of the best known companies out there. Companies like ByteDance, which is the company behind TikTok. SpaceX is a Decacorn, Elon Musk's private rocket company. And payments processor Stripe is another really well-known Decacorn. So with this rapid growth of Decacorns, there's been a huge growth in billionaires who are the people behind these companies. And some of the new members of the Billionaire list, who created Decacorns include Gary Wang, who's the 28-year-old co-founder of FTX, which is a cryptocurrency exchange, one of the leading cryptocurrency exchanges. And that company was valued at about $40 billion between its overseas and its US operations. So as the number of Decacorns has grown exponentially, so have the number of billionaires behind these companies. And some of the new billionaires who come from the world of Decacorns include Alex Atala and Devin Finzer, who are the guys behind OpenSea, which is the popular NFT marketplace. And that company was recently valued at $13.3 billion. Another new Decacorn billionaire is Vlad Yatsenko, who's the Ukrainian co-founder of Revolut, which is a London-based digital banking firm that raised money at a $33 billion valuation in 2021. So there's been this huge growth in the number of Decacorns over the past few years as the stock market has kind of hit record highs. Company stock prices and valuations have gone really crazy. And venture capital money has really flowed into a lot of startups who have stayed private for longer while they rake in this venture money and soar to new heights, all while staying private.
Indian infrastructure mogul Gautam Adani became the richest Asian billionaire in history earlier this month, and he's kept on climbing. Adani has now passed Warren Buffett to become the 5th richest person in the world. Forbes estimates that the 59-year-old Adani has a net worth of $123.7 billion as of Friday's market close, edging out the $121.7 billion fortune of Buffett, who is 91. Adani is the founder and chairman of Adani Group, a port and energy conglomerate with 6 publicly traded companies in India. Shares of each of those businesses are up between 19% and 195% this year, as Adani has led aggressive expansion into renewable energy, media, airports, and more. Earlier this month, Abu Dhabi's international holding company invested $2 billion in 3 of Adani's green energy-focused firms. He has said he wants to become the world's largest producer of green energy. with a goal of investing up to $70 billion into renewable energy projects. The son of a textile merchant, Adani dropped out of college and, in 1988, started a commodities export firm. By 2008, he had become a billionaire, joining the Forbes ranks for the first time, worth an estimated $9.3 billion. His fortune really began to take off at the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, after expanding his empire with major acquisitions like the 2020 purchase of a 74% stake in Mumbai International Airport, India's second busiest. In April, Adani agreed to buy Ocean Sparkle, India's largest marine services company, in a $220 million deal. Adani's estimated $123.7 billion net worth makes him the richest person in India. He surpasses Buffett as shares of the famed investors Berkshire Hathaway dropped by 2% last week amid a broad drop in the US stock market. There are now only 4 people on the planet richer than Adani, according to Forbes' real-time billionaire tracker: Bill Gates, Bernard Arnault, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk.
We're thrilled to be joined by one of the world's most successful investors and entrepreneurs, Reid Hoffman. You're the co-founder of LinkedIn, partner at Greylock, on the founding board member of PayPal, and on the board of Microsoft, in addition to the author of the #1 New York Times bestseller, The Startup of You. Reid, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be talking to you again.
Awesome. So I would love to start up with this book, and that's the reason why you're here in New York today. You first wrote The Startup of You over a decade ago. Tell us about that aha moment where you went from your personal evolution as a multi-stage entrepreneur, then to a seed angel investor, then to a venture capitalist, and now to an author. What made you decide to write the book?
So my high school, which is not too far from here, the Putney School in Vermont, generates, educators, artists, other sorts of folks. They asked me to give the commencement speech. And I was like, well, I'm a very odd person. I think I know in the entire history of a Putney alumni, the other 2 that are in the tech industry at all. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, I'll do it. But, what could I possibly say from my experience to these people in very different walks of life? And what I realized is the world has changed. Not that we should all be entrepreneurs, some of us should be entrepreneurs, but we should all be entrepreneurial. And that skills of being entrepreneurial are important, by the way, more important now even than before because of pandemic and change in industries and all these things, but we should bring the skill set of an entrepreneur to your own life, even if what you're doing is just, getting jobs and working in interesting companies and doing the thing that's great for you. And so I gave that speech. I circulated it to some friends, and they said, you need to write a book. And I was like, writing a book? Sounds kind of retro. Right? Like, okay, I guess I'll do that. Had known my co-author, Ben Kesnoka, from other contexts, talked to him about it, and we did it. And it's all the advice that the kind of an entrepreneur would give, not for starting companies, although you can use it for that, but for kind of being smart about this modern world and how you navigate the progress of your career.
And looking back to the original release of the book, I was going back and watching some of the content from there, and what I found fascinating was this video that you guys made, of this 8-minute video talking about, thinking about yourself like you're running a business as an entrepreneur. And what are some of the key takeaways that you think really people should be focused on when they're thinking about their career?
So, typical career advice tends to be discover your passion. What motivates you? And by the way, that's important. Of course you should, because if I hate that, then you're probably not going to be good at it. You're certainly going to be miserable, right? So passion's important. But when you think about it from a business perspective, an entrepreneurship perspective, it's like, well, what are your products and services? What are your skills? What are you offering? Well, what does the market want? Well, maybe you say, well, look, I'm really, really good at writing, but actually speaking on video I'm pretty good at, and that's actually, in fact, there's much more demand for that, right? And so there's what the market looks like. There's the competition, right? So what are my competitive edges? What is the thing that I have that fewer other people have? And that also helps you with your kind of market price. And then how do you think about investing in yourself? Like you say, okay, as opposed to just kind of stumbling through life, thinking about it as because a business will invest in a nicer storefront, some better chairs, maybe a flyers or something, or something else. well, how do you do that in a way to make yourself better, to have progress? And that's, of course, the 50,000-foot level. But then you go down into the details of like, well, having a network is really useful. Figuring out how to take risks smartly is useful. Figuring out how to kind of make decisions around how you engage in social media, or all of these modern tools, which is, of course, part of the reason why we updated the book, because when we did that one, there wasn't so much on social media, right, or gig work, or any of this other stuff. And so, okay, let's make sure all of those are covered, because those are part of the modern experience.
The modern economy and what work looks like today. And we were speaking before the interview started, and I think, I'm still of the generation that, our parents taught us that you need to stay in the same place for a long time, if not, the majority of your career. It was a prideful moment if somebody stayed at the same company for 10, 15, 20 years. I stayed at my previous employer over a decade, but that's not the norm now, and that's actually not the best route to be successful. And part of that video that I watched was like, is it the company's responsibility to promote you? Is it your educational institution's responsibility to educate you enough for the rest of your career? No, it's ours. And so I think, people feel like they're a bit confused, especially post-pandemic. We've seen this huge surge in entrepreneurship that we haven't seen in 40 years, according to the census. And at the same time, people it's the resignation economy. People are shifting jobs faster than ever. So for this new post-pandemic environment, what are some key guidance or advice that you've noticed that can help people succeed?
So I think part of what you need to do is say, okay, how do you convert challenges into opportunities? So like, okay, pandemic, economic asteroid, hit a lot of industries, hit a lot of careers, hit a lot of people's geophysical locations. That means there's a shakeup, but also is, by the way, part of the reason why thinking about it like an entrepreneur does. Because an entrepreneur says, oh, the market's changing, there's a new technology, the internet's coming, there's something I can do. Well, it's the same thing for you and your career and your jobs as a way of doing that. So the first thing you want to do is kind of say, okay, well, given these changes, as opposed to go, it's changed, like, oh, what's now possible? Then you use your network, right? You call smart people, maybe go out to lunch with someone that you know, and go out to lunch and say, hey, what's going on? Which industries are growing and thriving, recovering? Which ones are a good fit? You may not even you shouldn't necessarily just be doing that because I'm looking for a job this week, next week, obviously super important if that's what you're doing. But that general kind of awareness and connection, because like, for example, you're a journalist, you might say, oh, actually, in fact, in addition to doing like podcasts, maybe I should do a YouTube thing, maybe I should do a TikTok thing, maybe I should be one of the earliest journalists doing TikTok. And it's like, okay, that's an experiment, right? Like try things, say, well, maybe there's something interesting, or maybe someone's doing it well and I can talk to them and can see what's happening. And that's bringing the entrepreneurial mindset to the current time. Now, one of the things we did in the updated edition, because obviously we talked about LinkedIn, but we also, we didn't talk about social media as much. And so like having followers and like why everyone might think about like, actually, in fact, if I'm going and sharing content and I'm going and kind of saying some things about what I am, what I'm doing, what I'm seeing, it doesn't have to all be work and professional, but that kind of thing. You build followers who are, Twitter, Instagram, other things, who are like, oh, are paying attention to what you're doing, and that could be actually also helpful in your network. And then of course we have the gig economy and we have the creator economy, and those are all, when they're relevant to you, are things that possibly to do as part of how you're navigating.
And so this all naturally feeds into the future of work, something that is emerged as a huge, huge topic, as companies are still trying to figure out return to the office, a hybrid work model, a full back to the office. There's some industries like Wall Street want everyone back in the office and have been back for over a year. Others, like media companies, ours included, are more flexible. What do you foresee as what the future of work will really look and feel like over the next couple of years?
So people tend to prognosticate, unfortunately, in two ways. They tend to go, oh, it's going to roll back to what it is exactly 2019, maybe with little changes. Or they go, and now it's all distributed and it's all going to change. And the actual truth of the matter is it's going to not be what it was, but also, and there's going to be key things that are persistent learning, But what's going to happen now is there's the same impulse to get back to the office, to work together. There's going to be, like, I don't think headquarters will be abandoned and so forth. But now, well, we have a whole set of tools to actually make distributed work a lot better. So you could easily see, I know meetings Wednesdays where people might be working from home. You might see places where they say, well, actually we'll have a smaller office and we'll have a lot more hoteling and people will be moving between them. And maybe that person who generally does a lot of great work and moved out of state comes in a week a month and does that. And that now works as a pattern because it gives companies a broader range of talent, gives people a broader range of options, but it will be very idiosyncratic. The reason why there isn't one simple thing is because while the tool set has definitely expanded, and all of the internet native productivity tools, whether they're Coda or Figma or all these other things, will now be enhanced and used a lot. There's still that human impulse of, in the Hamilton line, being in the room where it happens. And so that will persist.
One of the things you talk about in the book, and you've spoken about before, is flexible persistence. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yep. So one of the things that's interesting about entrepreneurship is it's kind of a yin and yang. It's a combination of two things. And so in entrepreneurial advice, you go have a vision and grit and go there no matter what and pound your head through the wall and stay persistent and challenge and work your way through adversity. On the other hand, well, learn, figure out if it's product market fit, change, adapt, get intelligence and so, oh, not that plan, this one. Persistence and flexibility. And the answer is you have to put both of them together. Because you have to be making these judgments about, well, actually, in fact, if I'm pounding my head on this wall, I will get through it. Right? It isn't a 20-foot thick brick wall. It's a 1-foot thick brick wall, and I can get through. And on the other hand, like learning from, well, actually, that is too thick of a wall, or the competition just doesn't work, or that's just not interesting. My theory about what I was doing wouldn't work. And so you should always be listening and learning, being in permanent beta, as you know, for doing this. And you bring those two things together. And that's, of course, the same thing for careers, because the question is, you might say, well, I actually think this industry is going to be huge. And you say, well, there'll be more pictures and more images than ever, and the world will continue to enhance that in media. But what you might have started at Kodak, and actually, in fact, oh no, I should be heading towards Instagram.
Another thing that you talk a lot about is the power of your network. But what sometimes is a blanket statement, everybody says that you need a really strong network and that will get you where you need to go. But that's a little bit of a myth in and of itself, right? Yes. There's 3 different layers. There's the people that know you really well, and then there's various circles of influence and acquaintances, and it's important to kind of marry those. Can you talk a little bit about your strategy for how to use the network most efficiently?
Yep, and thank you for having read the book, right? Yes, so there's kind of your allies, your strong ties. Those are people who would, put some blood or sweat into helping you. Those are people who there's a very close tie of loyalty. It could be from your close friends, it could be that your close colleagues, it could be family members, it could be, any number of things. And those people will do very key things for you. They'll sit down with you. They might tell you like, your LinkedIn profile needs some improvement.
Mine does.
Yes, yeah. Right. Et cetera, et cetera. Then there's your friendlies. Those are people that, look, you like each other. You may have met at a conference, maybe had breakfast or coffee sometime. Certainly remember, you're kind of like, oh yeah, we talked about this or something. That gives a much broader range, which sociologists call weaker ties, but because that'll have a broader radar. Most likely, your allies, your close ties, if they had a piece of advice, they would have already given it to you. And when you're kind of looking up and kind of going, whoa, how's the world changing? What's going on? Your friendlies are a very good way of doing that. And that's one of the reasons why to occasionally have lunch, stay in touch, that kind of thing is an important thing to do every so often. And then your followers, right? The people that you may be like, people don't realize how many ways you can use LinkedIn or Twitter or Instagram to actually even having a small following can be able to, because if it's a following and something that you're doing, like you say, well, actually, in fact, my expertise is thinking about how, you know, kind of like, it could even be like social media, but it could be like my expertise is taking pictures, like my hobby is taking pictures of birds. Well, you may have a broad of people who go, ooh, I love birds too, and that's something I do, and that can be a connection through your followership that can also even give you a broader range and new networks. And so it's really important to have the skills, it's really important to do the work, it's really important to have achievement, but it's important to amplify that with these layers of network.
Layering in that perspective can prove invaluable and get you to where you want to go.
Yeah, 100%. And part of it is you can be intentional about your network. Love Adam Grant's work, by the way. You can be intentional about your network while still being human. Think of it as a dance you're doing together. It's not, oh, you're part of my network, I have your business card, et cetera. It's like, no, we are allies. We are doing this together. And so it can be very human, and you can still be conscious about it, saying, oh yeah, it'd be really good if we grab coffee every so often, but just be human about it.
What do you think is some of the hardest advice to take in the book? Hardest advice to implement, or something that people might misunderstand?
Probably is taking risk intelligently. Most people are pretty freaked out about risk. Most people want stability in what they're doing. And by the way, part of our thing is adaptability is the new stability, like learning and so forth. It can be a little challenging, but you can do it actually. It isn't, you have to be, jump 20 feet. It's just try new things a little bit and be willing to fail a little bit initially as you're doing that and kind of do that. And that's part of taking risk intelligently. Because when you take risks, you'll learn something. When you take risks, you might get a breakout opportunity. When you take risk, you may discover something amazing about yourself. And so figure out how to take small risks intelligently. Life is a team sport, not a solo sport. Have your team help you, your allies, your friendlies. Evaluate the risk, navigate it, make it lesser, recover from it easily. But that's probably the thing that most people would find most challenging.
So I want to shift gears a little bit. You are also the host of an award-winning podcast, Masters of Scale, and you are personal friends and have had incredible guests on the show, ranging from Elon Musk to Brian Chesky to Melody Hobson to Jack Dorsey to you name it. What are some of the lessons or observations that maybe you've found from some of those individuals and other entrepreneurs that either you've mentored or it could also be advice that you've given that could translate to a broader audience, things that people could kind of implement?
So one of the delights of being the interviewer, the host of Masters of Scale, is not just that I get to interview my friends, that's cool, but also I get to learn from them. I get to sit down and kind of ask questions and learn myself. And then when I'm thinking about which of these learnings are best to pass along, that's the thing that becomes a show. And also, by the way, we only release the episodes once I've got, oh yeah, we got it. This is something I've learned from, this is what I'm gonna do. So literally all of the episodes are things that I've learned from. I'd say, kind of personal, kind of some great things is I interviewed Franklin Leonard from The Blacklist, and part of it was realizing that systems thinking isn't just a technology thing, which I do a lot of systems thinking, network thinking within technology, but he also does it within content generation in Hollywood and how that all works. And so the kind of lesson is to say, you can actually apply these kinds of lessons between industries and between things, because you wouldn't necessarily think, oh, the person who goes into Hollywood for scripts and kind of being an agent, like what he did is, I gotta read all these scripts. Well, maybe we just email a bunch of people from an account and say, tell me the best scripts that you saw that you're never gonna make. And then that all iterates into the blacklist. Like that's yeah, exactly. Or very early, Miriam Nafisi, and this is part of like taking risk and doing things in her life. She was creating this business, Eve.com, and the parent had bought Eve for their daughter, and she was trying to negotiate the purchase for it, and the parent was like, well, you have to negotiate with my daughter. So she ended up negotiating with a 5-year-old for the domain for her business, which of course is just a delightful story. But the thing that she realized, she gave the kid a lot of money, but that wasn't what closed the deal. What closed the deal was the trip to Disneyland.
Oh, wow. That's a good one.
Right, so things like that, and that's the being experimental, trying new things that you haven't before, because it was like, as opposed to, no, I'm going to send the lawyers, it's like, no, I'm going to go do it myself. And that's among the things that makes Miriam such an amazing entrepreneur.
So no, the word no is something that you hear a lot as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure you've heard it many times in your career, and it's something that people also face whenever they're trying to push the envelope within a company or corporation. What are some lessons that you can get from hearing the word no?
Yep. And by the way, you're proving that you're very well read, because I'm certain you've also picked that up from our Masters of Scale book. Yes. And part of the thing that people normally go, and we try to, when you're trying to help people figure out how to navigate and learn things, it's take things that are somewhat counterintuitive. Because most of us, when you hear no, it's like, oh, it's depressing. Like, oh no, I have to walk away, etc. Actually, in fact, how do you learn from no's? How do you have no's be the thing that amplifies you? And it isn't the kind of classic sales, don't take no for an answer. Because, by the way, that's sometimes pretty irritating. Depending, when people.
I'm sure you have had some pretty annoying
yes.
entrepreneurs be like, "I don't take no for an answer."
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, and that's not good. Right? Yes. It's people interacting, and so. But what you do is you say, "Okay, what can I learn from it?" Right. So, like for example, if you're pitching a business and someone says no, it's like, "Okay, please tell me why." Right? Because I might learn something. I might learn something on how to pitch. I might learn something on how to refine the idea. I might learn something from network intelligence. Like very early in LinkedIn, what everyone was telling me is it's a network product. The first person no value, second person no value, third person no value. You have to get like to hundreds of thousands of people before it's valuable. Oh, that's useful I should steer into that. I should figure out how to solve that in order to build that, because that's network intelligence, what you're getting. So when you get no's, think about how can I learn from it? How can I adjust? Don't treat it as a soul-crushing moment or I shrink moment. Treat it as a learning moment, as a way to accelerate how you're going forward.
Mm-hmm. So you've been investing since when? The late 90s, the mid 90s?
I would say probably late 90s, because, in some sense I put a little bit of money into PayPal, and that was probably my first investment. Very lucky. Very
lucky. Well, no, very smart. I mean, I actually wrote a book proposal based on the untold story of PayPal, so I actually know a lot about that. And you did a lot of key fundamental work there. So how do you figure out which ideas are worth investing in?
So there's different patterns of investing. One of the things is you should certainly, if you are doing investing, have a theory about why you have a massive competitive differentiation and have expertise. It's a little bit like, think of the poker game. If you look around the table and you can't spot the sucker, then you are the sucker. So similarly, you got to say, okay, why am I a differentially good investor? Investing is one of those things people can do it, but you need to have that. So for me, and there's, by the way, investors who do other kinds of things, other industries, other things that are expert at that, and I always, like Warren Buffett, amazing, different kind of investing than what I do. So what I do is, I look at a very early stage technology, a founder where she or he or they might be, have a kind of a good plan, be unique in the market, have a unique kind of like an idea for what they can do. And there may be some real risks, like Airbnb, when I invest in that. It's like all kinds of things that could go wrong with that. But you look at all that and you say, if it goes right, it'll be huge. Mm-hmm. Okay, what's the chance it'll go right? What's the theory of the case? What are the risks? How do you navigate them? Can these people do it? Can I help them do it? And that's the kind of investment, that's my core investing.
Mm-hmm. What's one big investment regret that you have? A big opportunity like Airbnb that you said no to? Maybe it's Uber.
It's a long list.
Yeah, well, tell us a few, and why that if it makes it big, it'll be huge, wasn't enough to seal the deal.
Well, if I have that whole framework, then sometimes maybe a risk would cause it to be not the thing. One of the ones that feels most personally painful, because I really like Ben Silverman and Paul Sciarra, mm-hmm. They came before the venture round with Pinterest, mm-hmm. and they sat down and said, look, we got this interesting traction, this is really interesting thing. And I just didn't think it could be big enough, because I didn't understand pin boards as a new media type. Mm-hmm. And I just, oops, right? And so that was kind of the misestimation of, that's not that. I didn't see how it could be big, right? And that's one of the things. Actually, there was a funny thing where, someone I knew had told me, I met Airbnb a year later than I otherwise would have, because I was having this conversation, oh, you should hear about this thing, Airbnb, it's great, it's couch surfing. And I was like, oh, couch surfing is a terrible idea, right? I mean, because it's all the weaknesses of the weirdness of you're in the shared space and all the rest, with none of the glory, the amazing thing, like renting an apartment or renting a penthouse or a house or all these castle, all these other things. And by the way, still some people, the transaction's renting a couch, but you have to go the whole gamut of the experience and what are the experiences of being local to the community. And so I was like, that's not interesting. And so even though Brian had emailed me earlier, I was like, oh, I'm too busy. And it took a year to come back to. And then literally in the first 2 minutes where Brian and Joe and Nate were pitching Airbnb to me, I was like, okay, I'm going to make you an offer to invest. Put the pitch aside, let's make this a working session. What are you working on? What are the challenges? What do you think the next problem is? Why is that? Let's do that. Because I don't need to see the rest of the pitch. I already know that I'm going to make you an offer.
And were they prepared to share that with you on the fly, or
Yeah, well, because they're all three of them. They're great entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit into what's in the news right now, there's been a lot of attention being paid to one of your buddies from the PayPal days, Elon Musk, purchasing Twitter. What are your thoughts on that acquisition?
So Elon's obviously one of maybe the most storied and amazing entrepreneur of our time. Let's revolutionize the space industry. Let's revolutionize the car industry. Oh, this AI thing's important. Let's do this Neuralink thing. All of these amazing things. And so I think that and I think Twitter has been slow on its innovation. So I think that bringing a great innovator into this new zone is going to be a very interesting thing. I also think that his stated idea through Twitter that of doing more human identity validation is, I think, a very good thing. One obviously has to be careful about where this plays out to activists in oppressive countries or even people who are oppressed minorities within well-formed democracies, and you have to make sure that you're attentive to that. But I think human identity validation is, generally speaking, a very good thing, and a good thing that we do a lot of at LinkedIn, right? I mean, in terms of trying to make sure everyone is there as I'm Reid Hoffman. This is really my profile and who I am. And so I think that's all a very good thing. And look, I think it's, Elon always thinks big, and so jumping into what is otherwise a horrifically difficult problem, cultural conflict in society, freedom of speech issues, how do you balance a freedom of speech with we'd like to have a society that is a little kinder, right? A little bit more, building bridges versus burning them. And how do you sort all that out? Very difficult journey. Elon has a lot of guts.
So I remember you had said that I think you were his second call on SpaceX, right? Yes. So are there any calls that you can share for other investments or deals that he's maybe made to you?
Well, Elon and I are friends and we know each other well, so I do get calls. I think one of the reasons is because I don't talk about them very much.
Makes sense. Well, I have to ask.
Yes.
And then in terms of the work that you're doing at Greylock and the venture capital industry overall, where are you seeing the greatest amount of opportunity right now? I know you recently started your first company since LinkedIn. It's an AI company. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
A little. We're still mostly in stealth mode, but so I've been doing a bunch of stuff in artificial intelligence. I'm on the board of OpenAI, board of Microsoft. We at Greylock have invested in companies like Adept. And so, AI is going to be one of those very big transformational, probably of all industries, really amazing. And so Mustafa Suleyman, co-founder of DeepMind, and I were talking about his coming and helping us at Greylock with AI, and he agreed to do that. And then he then came to me and said, look, I also have this really interesting idea around not doing the kind of thing that we were doing at DeepMind so much, which is how do we build this kind of completely new artificial intelligence that kind of is doing its own thing, but also how do we help human beings discover their own superpowers, navigate the world and so forth, in a set of ways of taking these these language models and these foundational models and doing that. And there's obviously a specific idea, unfortunately, not yet ready to share, but let's do that. And I said, okay, look, I'll fund it and so forth. And he said, well, actually, in fact, would you co-found it with me? And I said, I think it's important enough, since the first time since LinkedIn that I would do that.
So I can come to you with my important idea and you might co-found it with me.
Well, I certainly wouldn't want to call out an advertisement for that. Right? But if it's possibly going to really improve the world massively at scale, then I'd certainly like to get the call.
All right, well, I'll put my thinking cap on then. Well, Reid, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Always a pleasure and an honor.